It all started with an innocent suggestion, one that I never imagined would lead to where it did. My husband Jake and his best friend Aaron had known each other for years. They were inseparable, like brothers. We'd all grown close over time, especially since Jake and I got married. We spent countless weekends together, sharing drinks, laughing over old stories, and supporting one another through life's ups and downs. But things shifted one evening, in the quiet of our living room, when Jake turned to me with an unusual look in his eyes. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like ... with someone else?" he asked casually, his fingers trailing absently over my arm. His tone was light, but there was a weight behind his words that made me pause. I laughed softly at first, thinking he was joking. "With someone else? What do you mean?" Jake didn't look away. "You know ... with Aaron." I froze, my heart skipping a beat. I searched his face, trying to read his expression, hoping I'd misunderstood. But there was no humor there, just curiosity, and something else I couldn't quite name. It felt as though a door had opened, one I wasn't sure I wanted to walk through. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, my thoughts swirling. Jake leaned closer, his gaze holding mine. "It's just something I've thought about ... a lot lately. I know Aaron finds you attractive. Hell, I've even caught you looking at him differently sometimes." His tone was soft, but the words hung in the air like a challenge. I felt my cheeks flush, a mix of embarrassment and confusion. Yes, I had noticed Aaron. Who wouldn't? He was tall, charming, with a presence that seemed to fill every room he entered. But I had never entertained the thought, not seriously. Not until now. Jake saw the hesitation in my eyes and pressed forward. "I trust you. And I trust Aaron. I think it could be ... interesting. No strings, no complications, just a way for us to explore something different. Together." My mind raced. How could he suggest something like this? It was madness. But there was something in Jake's voice, the calmness of his words, that made it hard to dismiss outright. He wasn't asking out of jealousy or insecurity. It was something deeper, something about pushing boundaries and experiencing something new, together. "I don't know, Jake," I started, unsure of where to begin, but his hand on mine silenced me. "Just think about it," he said softly, his eyes warm and reassuring. "You don't have to decide right now. But I know Aaron would never do anything to hurt you, and neither would I." That night, I lay in bed next to Jake, my thoughts spinning. Could I do this? Could I really go through with something so ... unorthodox? The idea of being with someone else, especially someone as close to us as Aaron, felt both thrilling and terrifying. There was an undeniable part of me that was curious, that wanted to know what it would feel like. But there was another part of me that feared it would change everything. The next few days passed in a blur of tension and contemplation. Every time I saw Aaron, I felt a strange mixture of guilt and excitement. It was in the small things, how his eyes lingered a second too long when we talked, or how his casual touches felt more charged than before. Was it all in my head? Or had Jake's suggestion planted something deeper in both of us? Finally, one evening, after another long dinner with Aaron, I pulled Jake aside. My heart was racing, my palms sweaty, but I knew I couldn't keep avoiding it. "I've been thinking about what you said," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "About Aaron." Jake looked at me, his expression unreadable. He nodded slowly, waiting for me to continue. "I'm not sure how I feel about it. But ... if you're sure this is what you want, if you really think it won't hurt us." "I'm sure," Jake interrupted gently, his hand on my cheek. "I want to do this together. I think it could bring us closer." I took a deep breath, my mind still reeling. Then ... let's talk to Aaron. The next weekend, we invited Aaron over again, just like we always did. There was no tension, no hint of what was coming, at least not at first. We laughed, shared drinks, and reminisced about old times. But as the evening wore on, the conversation shifted, and Jake turned to Aaron with a serious look in his eyes. "I need to talk to you about something," Jake began, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of anticipation. Aaron looked between the two of us, clearly sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "What's going on?" he asked, his brow furrowed. Jake took a deep breath and without hesitation laid everything out. He explained his thoughts, his feelings, and what we had discussed. Aaron sat in stunned silence, his eyes darting between me and Jake as he tried to process what he was hearing. I don't know what to say," Aaron finally muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Are you serious? You're both okay with this?" Jake nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I trust you, man. And I trust her. I think it could be something different, something good." Aaron's eyes met mine, and I could see the uncertainty there. But there was something else too, something that mirrored my own conflicted feelings. A part of him was intrigued, curious, just like me. We spent the rest of the night talking, laying out boundaries, making sure we were all on the same page. It was surreal, discussing something so intimate with the man who had been a part of our lives for years. But by the time Aaron left, there was a strange sense of calm between the three of us. The decision had been made. The door had been opened. The next few days were a whirlwind of nerves and anticipation. Jake and I talked endlessly about what was to come, reassuring each other that this was something we both wanted, something we could handle. And deep down, I knew that no matter how this played out, our relationship would survive it. When the day finally came, my heart raced as Aaron walked through the door. There was an unspoken tension in the air, a current that hummed beneath the surface of our interactions. Every glance, every touch felt more significant, more charged. Jake was calm, almost too calm, as if he had been preparing for this moment for a long time. We started the evening like any other, laughing, talking, sharing a few drinks, but as the night wore on, the mood began to shift. Jake excused himself to get more drinks from the kitchen, leaving Aaron and me alone in the living room. The silence between us was thick, filled with unspoken words. Aaron was the first to break it. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly, his eyes searching mine for any sign of doubt. I nodded, though my heart was pounding. "I think so. Are you?" Aaron hesitated, his hand brushing lightly against mine. The touch was subtle, but it sent a shiver down my spine. "I just don't want to do anything that could hurt either of you." "We've talked about it," I said softly. "Jake and I are in this together. We want to see where it goes." Aaron's eyes lingered on mine for a moment longer before he nodded, his expression softening. "All right, if you're both sure." Jake returned, setting the drinks on the table, and for a moment, the three of us sat there in a charged silence. Then, with a quiet certainty, Jake reached out and took my hand in his, guiding me toward Aaron. The rest of the evening unfolded in a slow, deliberate dance. Every touch, every glance felt more significant than it ever had before. Aaron's hand brushed against mine, and I could feel the heat of his skin, the tension simmering just beneath the surface. As Aaron's fingers intertwined with mine, the world seemed to shift, narrowing to the space between us. My breath hitched, and I felt Jake's steady presence beside me, his hand still resting gently on my back. It was surreal, the three of us sitting there, on the edge of something unknown, something that would change us forever. Jake, always the one in control, gave me a soft smile. "You can let go. It's okay," he whispered, his words filled with both reassurance and permission. I searched his face looking for any sign of hesitation or regret, but there was none. He was calm, collected, like this was exactly what he wanted. I turned back to Aaron, whose expression mirrored my own mix of uncertainty and desire. He was leaning in, just slightly, as if waiting for some unspoken signal. My heart raced, my skin tingling with a heightened awareness of every movement, every breath between us. Without thinking, I reached out, my hand brushing against Aaron's chest. The moment our skin touched, I felt an electric charge shoot through me. Aaron exhaled slowly, his eyes locked on mine, and in that moment, I knew we had crossed an invisible line. There was no turning back now. His hand moved to my waist, tentative at first, as though he was still unsure. But the warmth of his touch sent a shiver down my spine, and I couldn't help but lean into it. Jake watched us, his eyes soft, encouraging, as if he were guiding us through this strange, forbidden dance. Aaron's fingers tightened slightly on my waist, and I could feel the tension radiating from him, an unspoken desire that neither of us had acknowledged until now. Slowly, cautiously, he leaned in, his breath warm against my cheek. The anticipation built with every second, the air between us growing thicker, more charged, until finally, his lips brushed against mine. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, as though we were both testing the waters. But the moment our lips touched, something inside me ignited. My body responded instinctively, leaning into him, deepening the kiss as my hand slid up to his neck, pulling him closer. It was strange and exhilarating all at once, kissing Aaron, feeling the weight of his body so close to mine, while Jake watched from the sidelines. But there was no jealousy in Jake's eyes, only a quiet intensity, a satisfaction in seeing this unfold. Aaron's hands moved to my back, his fingers tracing delicate lines up my spine, and I felt my breath quicken in response. I could feel his heart pounding against my chest, the heat between us growing with every passing second. The kiss deepened, became more urgent, more demanding, as if all the tension that had been building over the past few weeks was finally being released. Jake shifted beside us, and I pulled away slightly, glancing over at him. He gave me a reassuring smile, his eyes glinting with something unreadable. "Go ahead," Jake said softly, his voice steady. "I'm right here." Those words sent a wave of warmth through me, and I turned back to Aaron, who was watching me with the same mixture of desire and uncertainty that I felt. Slowly, cautiously, I moved closer, closing the distance between us once again. Aaron's hand slid down to my hips, pulling me onto his lap, and I felt a rush of heat spread through my body at the intimacy of the gesture. The kiss deepened once more, our bodies pressing together as the tension between us continued to build. I could feel every muscle in Aaron's body tense beneath me, his hands gripping my waist tightly as though he was afraid to let go. It was intoxicating, the feeling of being caught between two people I cared about so deeply, each touch more electrifying than the last. Aaron's lips moved to my neck, leaving a trail of soft, heated kisses along my skin, and I gasped, my fingers tangling in his hair as I arched against him. Every touch, every kiss, sent waves of pleasure through me, and I could feel my body responding in ways I hadn't expected. Beside us, Jake remained quiet, his hand resting gently on my back, as if to remind me of his presence. I glanced over at him, my heart pounding in my chest, but all I saw in his eyes was encouragement, a desire to see this play out, to see me let go of all my inhibitions. I turned back to Aaron, and in that moment, any remaining hesitation melted away. I kissed him again, more fiercely this time, my hands roaming over his chest, feeling the heat of his skin through his shirt. Aaron responded in kind, his hands gripping me tighter, his lips moving hungrily against mine as the tension between us reached a fever pitch. It was overwhelming, the intensity of it all, the way our bodies seemed to move in perfect sync, driven by an unspoken desire that had been building for far too long. I could feel Aaron's breath quicken against my skin, his hands trembling slightly as he pulled me even closer. And then, without warning, Jake's hand slid up my back, his fingers brushing lightly against my skin, sending a new wave of sensation through me. I gasped, turning to look at him, and found his eyes filled with a mix of affection and desire. "Are you okay?" Jake asked softly, his voice gentle but filled with a quiet intensity. I nodded, unable to form the words, my heart racing as I tried to process everything that was happening. Jake's hand remained on my back, his touch grounding me even as the heat between Aaron and me continued to build. Aaron pulled me closer, his lips finding mine again, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. The kiss was deep, passionate, filled with a need that I hadn't realized existed until now. Every touch, every breath was electric, and I felt myself getting lost in the moment, in the sensation of Aaron's hands on my body, in the warmth of Jake's presence beside me. I could feel the tension reaching its breaking point, the heat between us becoming almost unbearable. Aaron's hands roamed over my body, his touch growing more confident, more insistent, as we both gave in to the desire that had been simmering beneath the surface for so long. In that moment, everything else faded away. It was just the three of us caught in this strange, intimate dance, exploring boundaries we hadn't even known existed. I could feel Jake's breath on my neck, Aaron's hands on my waist, and the overwhelming sensation of being pulled in two directions at once, each one filled with its own kind of intensity. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the moment broke. We pulled away from each other, our breaths coming in short, ragged gasps, the air around us thick with the remnants of what had just happened. I stayed there for a moment, breathing heavily, my heart still racing as I tried to collect myself. The room felt charged with an energy I couldn't quite explain, something beyond just physical attraction. It was as if the very air had shifted, thick with the weight of what had just happened, with the awareness that we had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Aaron's hands remained on my waist, his grip loosening as he leaned back slightly, his gaze searching mine. His expression was a mix of awe, desire, and something deeper, a shared understanding of the magnitude of what had just unfolded between us. He began, but his voice faltered. He didn't need to finish. We both knew that whatever words he might have said couldn't capture the complexity of the moment. I turned to Jake, my breath still unsteady, and found him watching me with an intensity that sent another ripple of emotion through me. His hand was still resting lightly on my back, a silent reminder of his presence. There was no anger in his eyes, no regret, just a calm, steady gaze that made me feel both vulnerable and safe at the same time. "Are you okay?" Jake asked again, his voice gentle, though I could hear the tension beneath it. I nodded, but the truth was, I didn't know if I was okay. I didn't know how to process everything I was feeling, the confusion, the desire, the guilt, and the strange sense of liberation that had settled over me. It was all too much, and yet, I couldn't deny that something inside me had shifted. Jake reached out, his hand cupping my cheek, and I leaned into his touch, grateful for the steady anchor he provided in the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "We can stop," he said softly. "If it's too much, we can stop right now." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to pull away, to return to the safety of the life we had before this moment. But another part of me, the part that had been awakened by the touch of both Jake and Aaron, wasn't ready to let go. I had stepped into something unknown, something that scared me, but there was no turning back now. "I'm okay," I whispered, though the words felt fragile, tentative. I wasn't sure if I was trying to convince Jake or myself. Aaron, who had been watching us quietly, finally spoke, his voice low and filled with a hesitant uncertainty. "We don't have to keep going. I don't want to push you into anything you're not ready for." I looked between the two of them, feeling the weight of their concern, their care for me. It was strange being at the center of something so intimate, so raw, and yet feeling supported by both of them. It was clear that whatever this was, it wasn't just about desire. There was trust here, an unspoken bond that had been tested and somehow strengthened. "I don't want to stop," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "I'm not sure what happens next, but I trust you, both of you." Jake's eyes softened, and he leaned in to kiss me gently at first, then more deeply, as if reassuring me that I wasn't alone in this. His lips were warm, familiar, a reminder of everything we had built together over the years. And yet, there was something new in his kiss, something that spoke of shared exploration, of boundaries being expanded. Aaron shifted beside us, watching with an intensity that made my skin tingle. His presence was undeniable, and when Jake pulled back, I turned to Aaron, feeling the pull between us just as strong as it had been before. Without hesitation, I kissed him again, this time with more confidence, more certainty. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me close, and I felt a rush of warmth flood through me. The three of us moved together in a strange, delicate rhythm, touches and glances exchanged like secrets in the dark. It was overwhelming and exhilarating all at once, the intensity of the moment growing with every passing second. I could feel the heat between us building, the tension rising to a point where it felt like the world might break apart if we didn't give in. But then, just as the moment reached its peak, something shifted inside me. A quiet realization, a reminder that while this experience was new and exciting, it wasn't without consequence. The weight of what we were doing, the line we had crossed, began to settle over me like a heavy blanket. I pulled back, my breath shaky, my heart pounding in my chest. "Wait," I whispered, barely able to find my voice. Both Jake and Aaron stopped immediately, concern flashing in their eyes. "What's wrong?" Jake asked, his hand brushing a strand of hair from my face, his touch gentle, filled with understanding. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice trembling. I need a moment." Aaron nodded, his expression softening. "Of course, we can stop." I sat back, my hands trembling slightly as I tried to process everything. The intensity of the moment, the feelings swirling inside me, it was all too much. I hadn't expected it to feel like this, hadn't anticipated how deeply it would affect me. Jake was beside me in an instant, pulling me into his arms. "It's okay," he whispered, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "We don't have to figure it all out right now. We can take it slow." I nodded, grateful for his understanding. But as I sat there, wrapped in Jake's embrace with Aaron watching us quietly from the other side of the room, I realized that this was more than just a moment of physical intimacy. It was a turning point, a moment of reckoning for all of us. We had crossed a line, yes, but it wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something new, something uncertain, and while I didn't know where it would lead, I knew that I wasn't alone in this journey. As the three of us sat there, the air between us thick with unspoken emotions, I realized that there were no easy answers. We would have to navigate this together, to face the consequences of what we had done, and to figure out what it all meant for our relationships. There would be confusion, doubt, and likely some pain. But there would also be growth, connection, and a deeper understanding of each other. For now, though, we were together, and that was enough.